I'm a total Southern girl. And so taking me out of the South, and bringing me out to, more of the Southwest, it was a major change. I didn't know a soul. And so when I moved out here, I remember probably maybe a week or 2 weeks before I came out here, my dad said, "Hey, you have a second cousin who lives in Mesa, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And so why don't we give her a call and see if she would mind if maybe you stayed with her for a couple of weeks until you can kind of figure out where you want to live and kind of what the nice, like the safe areas are." And so I did that and ended up, living with my second cousin. Her name is Anna and her husband was Lee. And, oh gosh, what a special couple, and someone, that was really influential, in my life, and especially during this transition. And I got out here though, and started just trying to create that support system, around me, and they played a massive role in that. But I just thought, I got this. Having the athletic department, having a lot of like-minded people around me made it easier. And then when I started cycling, I just started meeting even more and more people that were like-minded, and just, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't necessarily, I would go on some of these group rides, but I would just find, and I didn't know a soul. And slowly people began to, to talk to me. But as you probably can already tell, I've never met a stranger. So I'm totally I'm curious about people, and I want to know their stories. And so, I've just introduced myself and always have a smile. And, one thing Dad always said is, and just be kind, just be kind to people. And so I just always came in with that mindset, and so things have turned out really well, and yeah.
You're similar to my wife. She doesn't know a stranger. She spent a few years in Texas. I think she picked up on that South pretty quickly. It's funny, she was traveling today. I told her, I said, "Hey, I'm sure you're talking to everybody on your way south."
Exactly. We, us Southern girls, I mean, it's kind of nice. It's very genuine as well. You know, like I'm sincere. I really want to engage with people, and I really feel that people appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my husband at one point, he had said to me, "Anna, you ask all of these questions straight away to these, people that are strangers." And I said, "Well, I'm just curious, and I said, "But if you pay attention, you'll see that I always offer them something about myself first.
Mm-hmm.
And then they feel a little bit more comfortable, giving me some information about them." And I really think that people want to talk about themselves, like, think about it as you go through your day, and I'm sure that you encounter, a lot of people, and you have these conversations and engagements and stuff, but there are a lot of people out there that don't speak to anyone at all during the day.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I make a point. I'm out on the trail, or I'm out, on the road riding. I say hello and good morning to every single person. And I try to, look at them in the eye and not just, but I think people, they really want to talk about themselves. They want to tell you, but no one really asks. And so I just do my best to ask, and then listen.
I think that's a very good public service announcement. We would all be better humans. This would be a better world if we just reached out more often. I personally make it a point when I'm in line, whether it's at the coffee shop or the bank or wherever, to put my phone down and just look at the person in front of me and behind me and engage them if they look like they're willing to, or at least just say hi. because I think you're right. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
many people are longing just to have a touch point in their day. And many people, as you suggested, don't talk to anybody all day. And there's no reason not to. I mean, we live
Mm-hmm.
in a wonderful world. We're very fortunate to live in the United States and the freedoms that we have to go and come as we choose. And it's just a really good point. The other thing that you said a few minutes ago about the influence of not only your parents, but your family there in Arizona and what an impact that they made on you. I don't think we realize how much of an impact we make on others. And if we take a minute to really think about that, you know, I tell my wife, because we got a pretty big social media following through my racing career, I said, people are always paying attention. You know, they're watching from afar, even though you don't hear from them. And we have to be careful how we influence others and always try to influence in a positive way and be those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you're a good example of that, who you are today, and based on the influences of the people that you were surrounded with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, very true.
Yeah. So, you know, I hear this kind soul on the other end of the line here, and we're recording it to have proof. You became a professional cyclist. And, you know, it took me a lot of years to realize how tough and hard that sport is, because those people out on the track racing professionally are ruthless. And not only could you get really hurt, I mean, you could die out there. I know it's very, very dangerous to be a professional cyclist. I get the transition from running some triathlons and you gravitated towards the bike. I get all that. But going from that to becoming a pro on a bike is a whole different story. How did that happen?
Well, so, you know, I just had always been competitive and always had this really big engine, you know. I mean, on the soccer field, that was what I brought to the team. You know, I could run all day long, you know, and my fitness level was always super high. And then, so that translated really easily, you know, onto the bike. And so once I kind of got the technique and stuff down, it was almost Katie bar the door. I loved it, you know, and I had like I said, I had the engine to back it up. And so I wouldn't say that, you know, right out the chute that it was easy by any means, because it's not. I would say that it typically takes a good, you know, probably 5 years of really like focused training, and both on and off the bike, but a lot of strength building and just mental toughness, because I'll tell you, you suffer tremendously out there. And so you get kind of smart though, and you want to, you know, obviously lessen the amount of time that you spend suffering, or delay it. And so that's where, you know, what was really cool was that I had this science background. And so I started using the science for myself so that I could train and fuel myself properly so that I could delay the time in which that suffering ever started, you know? And so I got kind of smart with it. And then once I realized that I was doing this for myself, I wanted to share it with everybody else, you know? And so I started bringing people in, and I'm like, hey, let's just take all the guesswork out of this, and let's just work off the data, you know? Let's use science. And, you know, and so from that, I not only benefited myself on the bike and training and racing, but now I was able to, you know, work with my teammates, work with their family members, you know, work with other people, and actually, you know, coach a lot of athletes as well using this system.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I told you before we got on the phone that I raced the Spartan Series competitively. My trainer, not only did he put me in the pool to increase my endurance, low impact endurance, he also put me on the bike, which I'd never really had been on a road bike before. And he gave me some very challenging workouts on the bike, again, to increase my long distance endurance running. And I just could not believe how hard it could be to get on that bike. And once you start putting on some miles, you know, I mean, look, I could ride down the road and back, but when you start putting on miles, it's exactly what you said. It's a suffer fest.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, like you touched on before we got on the podcast, you were talking about your off road in the trucks and stuff,
Yeah.
your off road racing,
Yeah.
and I said, how different that is, how long you spend in that truck, and if you aren't trained properly and fueled properly and hydrated properly, then there's no way you begin to, I mean, you have to think that you've got this, this gut brain axis going on as well. And so if your gut microbiome, if your blood sugar is not optimized, then your decision making, in that truck is really skewed.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're able to make super high quality decisions. And that can be very detrimental, or it could be the reason why, you win or lose in that competition, and so we always start with, hey, let's measure and see what is going on, with your metabolism. And then let us put together that plan that we are going to optimize that blood sugar, because we know once we optimize someone's blood sugar, that regardless of what their goals are, if it is athletic performance increasing, but maybe it's just sustained energy throughout the day, or maybe it's that they want to reverse their diabetes, or they want to just be able to play with their grandkids and not feel so wiped out. Well, we can provide them, with the tools in order to do that. And I think that's the key, So yes, the training stuff is very, can be very important, but we have to first start with addressing that daily nutrition and really looking at how we can optimize that blood sugar, and then people will thrive.
I don't think, and I love that this is where we're going with the conversation. I don't think that enough people realize how important their diet is, what they put in their body, that fuel, right? You got to have the right fuel to operate throughout the day. And I really appreciate that you said, even to enjoy your grandkids. Being an athlete, I encounter it in a little bit more of an extreme way. Wasn't a funny story, but my wife wanted to cut some weight for a big competition, because we know if we're a little bit lighter, we run a little bit faster. And she decided to kind of go down that keto diet for a couple weeks and really trim out all the carbohydrates, because she had a little success on that when she was non-competing. And I'm, the encouraging husband. I'm like, okay, let's change our diet for the next couple weeks. Well, we went out for a 5-mile run, which is just a regular day for us. And mile 2, she's dying. She's not running. She's suffering. She's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. You go ahead. I'm like, no, I'll wait. And we're arguing for 3 miles, to get to the finish. And I just didn't get it. And then the next day, I had a 12-mile endurance run. And I went by myself, and about 2 miles in, I started suffering, and it hit me like a light bulb. I am completely carb depleted on this stupid diet to trim a couple pounds. And I realized, even though I'd been the healthiest I've ever been in my life the last 3 years, how important that balance is, and what you're talking about. And I just realized that so many people are probably off kilter in what they're eating and how they're fueling. And not even talking about the exercise that they're not doing, but really just the fuel level. So thank you for bringing that up. And I want to lead that in to learn more about what you guys do at Spark System and how you're helping with diabetes and weight loss and put the performance people aside, the everyday people. I even see on your website it says Well Mama Package. Let's talk about some of those things that you guys are doing.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, I was able to take what I was doing on a daily basis with athletes, and just to give you a little quick story, I had a primary care physician that came in, and he was an athlete himself. He was preparing for a big race in Utah, like a 200-mile road cycling race. And so he came in, and we did his resting metabolic test, which will determine exactly how many calories he needs every day just for brain function. But the real power of that resting test comes from what percentage of those calories are coming from fat and what's coming from carbohydrates. So we can kind of know what his body selecting for fuel, even at rest, just to, stand up, just to sleep, just for brain function. Okay. And so then I moved him onto the bicycle and we did an active metabolic test. And now in this active metabolic test, I can tell him exactly what he's utilizing for fuel.